Please don't make me go back with him.
The 10-year-old boy's voice cracked as he gripped the biker's leather vest with his good hand, the other trapped in a filthy cast nobody had changed in weeks. Pill bottles scattered across the diner table. 5 names, none of them his. The biker's eyes went from the bruises on the kid's neck to the terror in his face, and made a decision that would expose a murder plot hiding behind a guardian's smile. Because 3 minutes earlier, this limping child had asked one terrifying stranger a question nobody else would answer. "Can I sit with you?" Before we continue, subscribe and comment your city, TV or phone, because what happened next proves that sometimes the scariest-looking person is the only safe choice left. Ethan Cole counted seconds the way most kids counted allowance money. Carefully, desperately, knowing that when they ran out, something bad happened. He had 9 minutes before Dale's shift ended at the distribution center 3 miles down the highway. 9 minutes to find a place where a man who smiled in public and whispered threats in private couldn't drag him back to the house that smelled like fear and old carpet. The Desert Rose truck stop sat off Interstate 17 like a tired promise. Fluorescent lights, cracked vinyl booths, coffee that tasted like it had been waiting since morning. Ethan pushed through the glass door and felt the blast of overheated air hit his face, making his neck brace itch where the skin had gone raw underneath. His right leg dragged slightly. Not enough that strangers noticed immediately, but enough that his hip screamed every third step. The doctor at the emergency room 5 weeks ago had said, "Keep weight off it for 6 weeks, come back for follow-up." Ethan never went back. Dale said doctors were expensive, and Ethan was clumsy, and that was the end of it. 3 booths in, Ethan made his first attempt. 2 truckers sat shoulder to shoulder, laughing about something, plates of meatloaf between them. Ethan stepped close enough that one of them glanced up. The man's smile faded when he saw the neck brace. "Excuse me," Ethan started, voice barely above a whisper. The trucker's buddy cut him off. "Sorry, kid, we're heading out in 5. They weren't heading anywhere, their food was still hot. But Ethan understood rejection the way he understood pain, as a fact, not a surprise. "Okay," he said. Second booth. An older woman with silver hair pulled back tight, reading a paperback with a cowboy on the cover. She looked kind. That was the problem with kind-looking people, Ethan had learned. They looked kind until you needed them to be kind. "Ma'am?" Ethan tried. She looked up. Her eyes went to his neck brace, then to his backpack, then back to her book. "I'm waiting for someone, sweetie." The lie landed soft, but it still landed. Ethan's throat tightened. 7 minutes now. Third attempt. A family. Mom, dad, little girl in a booster seat, coloring on the back of a kids' menu. The dad saw Ethan approaching, and his whole body language shifted. Protective. Suspicious. "Can I help you?" the dad asked, in the tone people use when they mean the opposite. Ethan started. "Where are your parents?" the mom interrupted. Ethan's stomach dropped. That question was the one that made social workers show up and then leave again because Dale was so good at looking like a concerned guardian who'd taken in his dead wife's son out of the goodness of his heart. "Bathroom," Ethan lied, backing away before they could ask more. 6 minutes. The back corner booth held one person. A man who looked like trouble, wore leather, and carried it naturally. Beard mostly gray, trimmed close. Shoulders broad enough that his leather vest sat like armor. Arms covered in ink that probably told stories Ethan was too young to understand. A patch on his vest read, "Hellsangels," in letters that looked like they'd been earned, not bought. The man ate chili with cornbread. Methodical. Like someone who'd learned to appreciate hot food because he'd gone without it before. His eyes scanned the diner every 30 seconds, not paranoid, just aware. Ethan's options had run out. He walked to the booth, each step a negotiation between his bad hip and his worse fear, and stopped 2 feet from the table, close enough to be heard, far enough to run if he needed to. The man looked up, didn't smile, didn't frown, just looked. "Sir?" Ethan said, and his voice cracked on the single syllable. He tried again. "Can I sit with you? Nobody else will let me." The man studied him for 3 seconds that felt like 30. Then he reached down with one boot and nudged the opposite chair out from under the table. Gentle, deliberate. "Sit," the man said. His voice sounded like gravel rolling over concrete, but there was no meanness in it. "You're safe right here." Ethan's knees almost gave out. He grabbed the chair back with his left hand, his good hand, and tried to lower himself. His hip caught. Pain shot up his side like electricity. He gasped, wobbled, and his backpack slipped off his shoulder. The man stood fast, caught Ethan's elbow with one hand and the backpack with the other. Didn't grab tight, didn't hurt him, just steadied him the way you'd steady something valuable and fragile. "Easy," the man said quietly. "Take your time. Nobody's rushing you." Ethan finally sank into the chair, breathing hard, and the man sat back down across from him, set the backpack beside Ethan's feet. "I'm Reaper," the man said. Ethan blinked. That's your real name?" "It's the one that matters." Reaper's eyes stayed level, calm. "What's yours?" Ethan Cole." Reaper nodded once, like he was filing it somewhere permanent. Then he lifted 2 fingers toward the counter where a waitress with tired eyes and a name tag that said Dolores was refilling coffee. "Ma'am," Reaper called, "can we get a menu over here and some water?" Dolores approached, gave Ethan a look that mothers give skinny kids, and said, "What sounds good, honey?" Ethan stared at the laminated menu like it was written in another language. His throat closed up. He couldn't remember the last time someone asked him what sounded good instead of what he was allowed to have. "Grilled cheese," Reaper said, easy and certain. "Fries, chocolate shake, and make it quick if you can." Dolores nodded, touched Ethan's shoulder so gently he barely felt it, and walked away. Ethan's hands sat in his lap, fingers twisted together. "I don't have money." "Didn't ask if you did," Reaper said. Silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable, just there. "How long you been in that neck brace?" Reaper asked. Ethan's jaw tightened. 5 weeks. "You see a doctor about it?" "Once, at the emergency room." "They tell you to come back?" Ethan nodded. "But you didn't." Another nod. Reaper's eyes narrowed slightly, not with anger, but with the kind of focus that meant he was reading between words. "Why not?" Ethan's voice dropped to almost nothing. "Because my stepfather said it costs money, and I need to be more careful." The food came faster than Ethan expected. Dolores set the plate down with the shake beside it and said, "You eat up now, sweetheart." She looked at Reaper. "You need anything else?" "We're good," Reaper said. "Thanks." Ethan stared at the grilled cheese like it might disappear. His hands didn't move. "It's not a trick," Reaper said quietly. "Eat." Ethan picked up half the sandwich and took a bite. Then another. Then the kind of bite kids take when they don't know when they'll eat again. Fast, controlled, trying not to look desperate while being exactly that. Reaper watched him eat and didn't ask questions until Ethan's hands stopped shaking. When the shake came up through the straw and Ethan wrapped both hands around the glass like it was giving him something more than cold and sweet, Reaper leaned forward slightly. "Why'd you ask to sit with me?" Reaper said. Ethan swallowed hard.
Because you look scary.
Reaper's eyebrows went up a fraction.
And everybody else looks normal.
Ethan continued, words coming faster now.
Normal people see stuff and don't do anything. I needed someone who looked like they'd actually do something.
Reaper's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. Respect, maybe. Or recognition. What stuff did normal people not do anything about? Reaper asked, and his voice carried a warning that said, I'm listening for real, so don't hold back. Ethan's lower lip trembled. He bit it to make it stop.
My mom died 6 months ago. Car accident.
My stepfather, Dale, he got custody because they were married. Nobody asked me if I felt safe. Nobody checked. He seems nice. He smiles. He has a good job, but Ethan's voice cracked.
He locks my bedroom door from the outside at night.
Reaper's jaw tightened, the only visible reaction.
He says it's because I sleepwalk,
Ethan whispered.
But I don't. He just doesn't want me going anywhere.
Where do you sleep? Reaper asked.
The garage. He converted it. Says it's my room. But there's no heat, and the lock is on the outside.
Dolores walked past with a coffee pot and caught the tail end of that sentence. Her steps faltered. She didn't stop, but her face hardened with the kind of rage that grandmothers feel when they hear about children suffering. You told anyone? Reaper said.
A teacher noticed bruises, called someone. A lady came to the house. Dale was so nice. Showed her my room, the one inside, not the garage. Made it look like I had everything.
Told her I make up stories for attention because I'm grieving. She believed him. Reaper's knuckles went white around his coffee mug. And your mom, Reaper said carefully. The car accident. You said it was 6 months ago.
It was 1 week after she tried to leave him,
Ethan said, and the sentence sat there like a grenade with the pin pulled.
She told me we were going to my grandma's house. She was packing. Then the next morning she said she felt dizzy. She drove anyway. Her car went off the road up on Mount Francis. Police said she fell asleep at the wheel.
But you don't think that, Reaper said, not a question.
I found pills crushed up in her coffee mug that morning,
Ethan said. His voice broke completely now.
In the sink. She'd already drunk it. I didn't know what it meant then. I do now.
Reaper looked at Ethan for a long, heavy moment. Then he reached across the table, slow, so Ethan could see it coming, and rested his hand on the table between them. Not touching Ethan, just close enough. Ethan, Reaper said, I need you to hear me. I believe you. Ethan's face crumpled. Tears came fast and silent, the kind of crying kids do when they've held it in so long that the release feels like breaking. I believe you, Reaper said again, and we're going to figure this out, but I need you to tell me the truth about something. Why are you here right now? Why'd you leave? Ethan dragged his sleeve across his face and pulled his backpack into his lap. His hands shook as he unzipped the front pocket. That's when the pill bottles spilled out. 5 orange containers clattered across the table. Reaper's eyes tracked each one. Different names, different prescriptions. None of them said Ethan Cole. Dolores froze 3 tables away, coffee pot mid-pour. The truckers in booth 2 looked over.
He makes me hold them,
Ethan whispered.
He picks them up from different pharmacies. Says it's for his back. But then he has me
take them places. I don't ask questions. He gets mad when I ask questions. Reaper picked up 1 bottle, OxyContin, prescribed to David Merrick. Picked up another, hydrocodone, prescribed to Linda Travers. A third, muscle relaxers. Robert Chen. Who are these people? Reaper asked, voice deadly quiet. I don't know, Ethan said, but he keeps a notebook. I saw it once. It has names and amounts. He called it his insurance. Reaper set the bottles down carefully, his expression unreadable, but his eyes burning with something cold and final. Ethan, Reaper said, does Dale know you have these? Ethan's face went pale. No. I took them this morning. He keeps them in a lockbox in his truck. I thought if I had proof, someone would finally listen. You stole evidence from him, Reaper said. I'm sorry, Ethan whispered. I'm sorry, You did exactly the right thing, Reaper interrupted, firm but not harsh. You gave yourself leverage. Ethan's eyes widened. What? Before Reaper could answer, Dolores appeared at the table. She looked at the pill bottles, then at Reaper, then at Ethan. That boy's stepfather, she said quietly. He drives a black Ford Ranger, doesn't he? Ethan's whole body went rigid. Yes. Why? Dolores's face was grim. Because one just pulled into the parking lot. Ethan shot to his feet so fast the chair scraped against linoleum. His hip screamed. He didn't care. Panic made his voice high and thin. He tracks my phone, Ethan gasped. I forgot. I didn't turn it off. He's going to... Reaper stood, calm as stone, and put one hand on Ethan's shoulder. Sit back down. You don't understand, Ethan said, tears streaming now. He'll take me. He'll smile, and everyone will believe him, and I'll... Ethan. Reaper's voice cut through the panic like a blade. Sit down. Ethan sat. Reaper pulled out his phone, typed one word, and hit send. Churchyard. What does that mean? Ethan whispered. Reaper looked at him, and for the first time, something like a promise crossed his face. It means you're not alone anymore. The glass door of the diner swung open. Dale Merrick walked in, wearing pressed khakis and a clean polo shirt, the picture of a concerned guardian on a cold November night. His eyes scanned the diner and landed on Ethan with laser precision. His smile was perfect, practiced, poison wrapped in politeness. Ethan, Dale said, voice loud enough for the whole diner to hear, warm enough to sound like relief. Thank God. I've been looking everywhere. Ethan couldn't breathe. Reaper didn't move, didn't blink, just stood between the booth and Dale's approaching footsteps like a wall that had decided it wasn't going anywhere. And in the parking lot, 3 miles down the highway, the sound of motorcycle engines roared to life. Dale took 3 steps into the diner before Reaper shifted his weight forward, not blocking the aisle, but filling the space in a way that made Dale's 4th step hesitate. Ethan, buddy, Dale said, ignoring Reaper entirely, voice dripping with concern that didn't reach his eyes. You scared me half to death. Why'd you run off? Ethan's hands gripped the edge of the table until his knuckles went white. His voice came out strangled. I didn't run. Sweetheart, you left the house without telling me. Dale's smile stayed perfect. He looked at Reaper now, man to man, reasonable adult to reasonable adult. I'm sorry if he bothered you. He gets confused sometimes. Grief, you know. His mother passed recently. Reaper didn't smile back. Kid asked to sit. I said yes. No bother. Dale's eyes flicked to the pill bottles still scattered across the table. His smile tightened for just a fraction of a second, but Ethan saw it. So did Reaper. Those are mine, Dale said quickly, smoothly. Ethan, you went through my things again? We talked about this. You told me to hold them, Ethan whispered. No, honey, you're confused. Dale stepped closer. Reaper didn't move, but his shoulders squared slightly. Dale noticed. His tone shifted, friendlier, more inclusive. Look, I appreciate you looking out for him, but I really need to get him home. It's a school night. Thought you said he was homeschooled, Reaper said evenly. Dale blinked. Yes, I meant routine. Kids need routine. Dolores appeared beside their booth, coffee pot in hand, but her eyes sharp. Sir, the boy said he wanted to sit here. He eating his dinner. Maybe you could give him a few minutes? Dale's jaw tightened. Ma'am, I'm his legal guardian. Then you can wait like a guardian, Dolores said, and there was Texas steel in that voice. Boy's not finished eating. Before Dale could respond, the diner door opened again.
A woman walked in wearing riding leathers, her black hair pulled back tight, dark eyes that swept the room in 2 seconds and catalogued every threat. She moved like someone who'd spent years navigating rooms full of men who underestimated her. She walked straight to Reaper's booth. Everything good here? She asked, voice calm but carrying authority. Dale's face shifted through confusion to irritation. And you are? Teresa Cortez, she said, not offering her hand. People call me Viper. I'm with Reaper's Club. Her eyes went to Ethan, then to the pill bottles, then back to Dale. I'm also a former Child Protective Services investigator, licensed for 15 years before I retired. Dale's perfect smile cracked at the edges. Those pill bottles, Viper said, picking up one of them. These aren't prescribed to the boy. They're mine, Dale said, too fast. I have a back condition. Viper picked up a second bottle. This one's prescribed to Linda Travers. A third, Robert Chen. She set them down gently, deliberately. You, David Merrick, and Linda Travers, and Robert Chen all at once? I pick them up for people, Dale stammered. Friends, family members. That's pharmacy fraud, Viper said quietly. And having a minor transport controlled substances is felony child endangerment. Dale's face flushed. Now, wait just a minute. No, you wait, Viper interrupted, voice still calm, but harder now. I'm calling the State Pharmacy Board fraud hotline. They're going to want to verify these prescriptions. You can't just, Dale started. I absolutely can. Viper pulled out her phone. In fact, I'm legally obligated to report suspected abuse. And a 10-year-old child in a dirty neck brace carrying someone else's opioids is about as suspected as it gets. Ethan's breath came faster. He looked at Reaper with terrified hope, like he wanted to believe this was real, but couldn't quite let himself. Dale changed tactics, his voice dropping into wounded innocence. This is insane. I've been caring for this boy since his mother died. He's traumatized. He makes things up. You're being manipulated by a troubled child. Is that so? Reaper said. He looked at Ethan. You making this up? Ethan shook his head, tears streaming now. Seems pretty clear to me, Reaper said. The diner door opened a third time. A man in his 60s walked in, moving with the careful precision of someone who'd spent time in field hospitals. He carried a worn leather medical bag, and his eyes went straight to Ethan's neck brace. Doc's here, Reaper said to Ethan. He's going to look at your neck. That okay? Ethan nodded frantically. Doc knelt beside the booth, eye level with Ethan. Hey there, son. I'm Raymond Fuller. Everybody calls me Doc. I was a combat medic. I'm not here to hurt you, just want to check that brace. Can I? Yes, Ethan whispered. Doc's hands moved gentle and professional, examining the edges of the neck brace without removing it. His expression stayed neutral, but his eyes darkened. How long you had this on? Doc asked. 5 weeks, Ethan said. And nobody changed it? Ethan shook his head. Doc's jaw clenched. He stood, looked at Dale, and said with the kind of quiet fury that came from seeing too much suffering, "This brace is causing skin breakdown. It's been on too long without proper medical follow-up. That's neglect." "He won't sit still long enough for appointments," Dale said desperately. "He's difficult." "He's sitting still right now," Doc said. "Real still. Like a kid who knows how to follow directions when he's not terrified." Dale's control started slipping. "You people have no right." "We have every right to care about a child," Viper cut him off. She was on her phone now. "Yes, hello, this is Teresa Cortez, former CPS investigator. License number TX47239.
I'm reporting suspected child abuse and prescription fraud. Child's name is Ethan Cole, age 10. Guardian is Dale Merrick." Dale's face went from red to pale. "You're making a mistake." Location is Desert Rose Truck Stop, Interstate 17, Prescott, Arizona. Viper continued into the phone. Child has visible injuries, is in possession of multiple controlled substances not prescribed to him, and has made credible allegations of abuse and neglect. "Stop," Dale said, his voice rising. "Stop right now." Reaper moved then. Not aggressive, just shifted his position so he was more fully between Dale and Ethan. "Sir, you need to calm down." "Don't tell me to calm down," Dale snapped. And there it was, the mask cracking wide open. "This is my house, my rules, my—" He caught himself, swallowed the rest, tried to rebuild the smile. Too late. Everyone had seen it. Dolores set down her coffee pot with a hard click. "I'm getting the manager. We're pulling security footage." Dale went rigid. "Security footage?" "Sure," Dolores said. "You'll want proof the boy came in here looking scared and hungry, won't you? For your side of things." Dale's mouth opened and closed. Ethan's small voice cut through the tension. "He tracks my phone." Everyone looked at him. "That's how he found me," Ethan said, pulling a cheap smartphone from his hoodie pocket. "He makes me keep location on. Says it's for safety. But really it's so I can't go anywhere." Viper took the phone, examined it. "This is a parental control app. Tracks GPS, monitors messages, remotely locks the device." She looked at Dale. "You can see everywhere he goes." "For his protection," Dale said weakly. "Or for your control," Viper countered. Doc was examining Ethan's neck more carefully now, the skin visible around the brace edges. "This irritation pattern is consistent with prolonged wear without adjustment. I'm seeing early signs of pressure sores. Medically, this is negligent care at minimum." Dale pulled out his own phone. "I'm calling the police." "Good idea," Reaper said. "Save us the trouble." Dale's thumb hesitated over the screen. That hesitation told everyone in the booth exactly how good an idea Dale actually thought it was. He made the call anyway, because control was all he had left. "Yes, I need police at the Desert Rose truck stop," Dale said, his public voice back in place. "My stepson has been taken by a group of bikers. I'm here trying to retrieve him and they're refusing to let him leave." Viper's eyebrow went up. Reaper's expression didn't change at all. "Taken?" Ethan said, his voice small and confused. "I asked to sit here." Dale covered the phone's microphone. "Ethan, please, you're not thinking clearly." "He's thinking fine," Reaper said. "You're the one lying to 911. Dale ignored him, spoke back into the phone. "Yes, I'm his legal guardian. I have paperwork. Please send someone immediately." He ended the call and looked at Viper with something like triumph. Now we'll see who the authorities believe.
Viper didn't look concerned. She looked tired, like she'd seen this play out 100 times. You think a badge makes you right? I've watched plenty of men with clean records hurt kids while everyone looked the other way. I haven't hurt anyone, Dale said. Then why is the boy terrified of you? Doc asked. Dale opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He's been through trauma. His mother's death affected him deeply. Sometimes he projects his grief as anger toward me. That's a very clinical explanation, Viper said. You a therapist? I read books. I try to understand him. You lock him in a garage at night? Reaper asked, voice flat. Dale's face twitched. That's a mischaracterization. He has a converted room. It's private. The lock is for his safety. He used to wander. Used to? Viper pressed. When he first came to live with me
6 months ago, Viper said. After his mother died.
Yes.
And you still lock the door from the outside?
Dale hesitated a beat too long. Sometimes, if he's having a bad night.
How do you know he's having a bad night if you've already locked him in? Doc asked.
Dale's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Ethan's voice was barely audible. He doesn't know. He just locks it every night. Ethan, that's not true, Dale said, but his voice had gone thin. Ethan looked up at him, and for the first time since Dale walked in, there was something other than fear in his eyes. There was clarity. You told me last week that if I kept being difficult, you'd make sure I ended up in state care, where nobody would believe anything I said. The diner went silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator behind the counter. I never said that, Dale whispered, but the conviction was gone from his voice.
You said it right after you locked the pantry, Ethan continued, and the words came faster now, like a dam breaking. You lock the pantry so I can't get food. You say it's because I eat too much, but I'm hungry all the time. You give me 1 meal a day and tell me I'm lucky to get that. Stop, Dale said. You broke my neck pushing me down the basement stairs, Ethan said, louder now, shaking. And you told the ER doctor I fell. You smiled at her. You held my hand. You made her believe you. That's enough, Dale shouted. Reaper's hand came down on the table, not a slam, but a solid presence. Let him talk. Dale looked around the diner wildly. The truckers were staring. Dolores stood frozen with a dish rag in her hands. A young couple in the corner booth had stopped eating entirely. You're all being played, Dale said desperately. Can't you see? He's manipulating you. He does this. He lies for attention. Funny thing about liars, Viper said quietly. They always assume everyone else is lying too. That's when Ethan reached into his backpack again, past the pill bottles, into a zippered inner pocket. His hands shook as he pulled out a second phone, smaller, cheaper, a burner. Dale's face went absolutely white. What is that? Reaper asked. His, Ethan said. I found it in his truck last week. He doesn't know I have it. Dale lunged forward. Give me that! Reaper caught Dale's wrist mid-reach, not rough, but absolutely final. Don't. Dale tried to pull back. Reaper's grip didn't budge. Let go of me, Dale hissed. Sit down, Reaper said, or I make you sit down. Your choice. Dale jerked his hand free and stepped back, breathing hard. You just assaulted me. Everyone saw that. I saw you try to grab something from a scared kid, Dolores said from the counter. Didn't see anything else. The truckers nodded. Viper took the burner phone from Ethan gently. Why'd you take this? Because I heard him talking on it, Ethan said, late at night, in the hallway outside my room.
He thought I was asleep, but I wasn't. He was saying things about money and— Ethan's voice broke. And about me not making it through winter.
The temperature in the diner seemed to drop 10 degrees. Viper turned the phone over in her hands.
This powered on?
Ethan nodded.
I charged it. I wanted to see what was on it. I thought maybe I could prove—
He couldn't finish.
Prove what, son? Doc asked gently. That I'm not crazy, Ethan whispered. That I'm not making it up.
Viper tapped the screen. The phone lit up. No password. She navigated to recent calls. Her face went hard.
14 calls in the last 3 days, she said. All to the same number.
She looked at Dale.
Who's Linda Travers?
Dale said nothing.
That's one of the names on the pill bottles, Reaper said.
Viper nodded slowly. Let's check messages.
That's private property,
Dale said, voice cracking.
You can't.
This phone was in a child's possession, Viper said. A child alleging abuse. I can absolutely look. She opened the text thread. Her expression changed from hard to horrified.
What? Reaper asked.
Viper's voice was barely steady.
There are messages here about payments, delivery schedules, and—
She looked at Ethan with something like grief.
And contingency plans.
What kind of contingency plans? Doc asked. Viper scrolled, read, scrolled more. When she looked up, her eyes were wet.
Messages discussing what happens to insurance money if Ethan dies.
The world stopped. Dale shook his head frantically.
No, you're misinterpreting.
If the kid doesn't make it through winter, the payout splits 70-30, Viper read aloud. Natural causes, nobody asks questions. She looked at Dale like he was something rotting.
Who were you texting this to?
Dale's mouth worked silently.
Ethan started crying for real now. The kind of crying that came from finally being believed after months of screaming into the void. Reaper put his hand on Ethan's shoulder, just rested it there. Steady, present.
There's more, Viper said quietly. She tapped the screen.
Voice memos.
Dale made a sound like a wounded animal.
Don't.
Viper hit play. Dale's voice came through the tinny speaker, recorded, undeniable.
The neck injury's healing wrong on purpose. If he needs surgery and doesn't get it, infection's possible. Spine complications. Could go either way, but if it goes bad, it's documented medical neglect that I can blame on his refusal to cooperate. The recording continued. Insurance investigator won't look twice at a sick kid with a history of problems. Linda's got the paperwork ready. Once he's gone, the trust converts to guardian payout. $750,000, split after expenses.
The diner was silent except for Dale's recorded voice talking about killing a child like it was a business transaction. When the recording ended, Viper set the phone down on the table like it was evidence at a crime scene. Which it was. Dale stood there, pale and sweating, his perfect smile shattered into pieces around his feet. Outside, the sound of sirens grew closer.
You need to understand,
Dale said, and his voice had gone hollow.
I didn't mean— It's not what it sounds like.
It sounds like you were planning to murder a 10-year-old boy for insurance money, Doc said, and every word landed like a stone. Dale looked around the diner at faces that had gone from suspicious to disgusted. His shoulders sagged. The fight drained out of him in real time.
I need a lawyer, he whispered. You need a conscience, Dolores said.
Red and blue lights flashed through the diner windows. A sheriff's patrol car pulled into the lot, followed by a second.
2 deputies got out, hands on their belts, assessing the scene.
Reaper looked down at Ethan. "You did good, kid. Real good." Ethan couldn't speak. He just held onto Reaper's arm like it was the only solid thing left in the world. The diner door opened. A deputy stepped in, taking in the cluster of bikers, the crying child, the pale man who looked like he was about to be sick. "Someone called about a custody dispute?" the deputy asked. Dale opened his mouth to speak. Viper held up the burner phone. "Deputy," she said clearly, "you're going to want to hear this recording before anyone says another word." And Dale Merrick's world, built on smiles and lies and a dead woman's trust fund, finally collapsed. The deputy's name was Harris, and he'd been working Yavapai County for 12 years, long enough to know when someone was about to lie to him, and long enough to know when a situation had already gone sideways before he walked through the door. He looked at Viper holding the phone, at Dale standing there like a man watching his execution, at Ethan crying into Reaper's shoulder, and made a decision. "Let's hear it," Harris said. Viper hit play again. Dale's recorded voice filled the diner a second time, cold and calculated, discussing Ethan's death like a stock portfolio. When it finished, Harris's jaw was set so tight his teeth could have cracked. "That your voice?" Harris asked Dale. Dale's mouth opened, closed. "I want a lawyer." "That's a yes," Harris said. He turned to his partner, a younger deputy named Ochoa. "Call for a supervisor, and get child services on the line." "Already done," Viper said, holding up her own phone. "I reported to the state hotline 6 minutes ago. Caseworkers en route." Harris nodded at her, recognition in his eyes. "You're Teresa Cortez. You testified in the Brennan case 3 years back." "I did," Viper said. "Your testimony put a bad man away," Harris said. Then he looked at Dale. "Seems like you got a habit of being in the right place." "Or the wrong people keep finding kids to hurt," Viper said quietly. Dale finally found his voice again, grasping at the only strategy he had left. "That recording is taken out of context. I was discussing hypotheticals. A conversation about what-ifs. I never intended—" "The neck injury's healing wrong on purpose," Harris quoted from memory. "That's pretty specific for a hypothetical." "I was venting frustration," Dale said desperately. "Any parent gets frustrated. You can't arrest someone for being upset." "Upset parents don't discuss insurance payouts when their kid dies," Ochoa said from across the room, phone to his ear. Ethan's voice cut through, small but certain. "He pushed me down the stairs. That's how my neck got hurt." Harris knelt down to Ethan's eye level, the way good cops do with kids. "Son, I need you to tell me exactly what happened. Can you do that?" Ethan nodded, wiping his face. "It was 5 weeks ago. I asked if I could visit my friend Tommy. Dale said no. I asked why. He got mad, really mad. He grabbed my arm and pushed me toward the basement. I lost my balance. I fell down the whole flight." "And then what?" Harris asked gently. "I couldn't move right. My neck hurt so bad I threw up. He waited 2 hours before taking me to the emergency room." "Why'd he wait?" Harris asked, though his expression said he already knew. "He said he needed time to get his story straight," Ethan whispered. "He told me on the drive that if I said he pushed me, no one would believe me, and I'd end up in foster care where terrible things happen to kids." Dale shook his head violently. "That's not true. I was assessing whether he needed immediate care. I didn't want to overreact." 2 hours with a neck injury is medical neglect, Doc said flatly. "I've seen combat wounds treated faster." "And you are?" Harris asked. "Raymond Fuller, medic, Army, retired." I examined the boy's brace. "It's been on too long without proper care. Skin's breaking down underneath." Harris stood and looked at Dale with the kind of disgust reserved for specific types of men. "Sir, turn around and put your hands behind your back." Dale's face went from pale to gray. "For what? I haven't been charged with anything." "That recording is probable cause for child endangerment," Harris said, "and I'm detaining you while we sort this out." "You can't just—" "I absolutely can," Harris said. "Turn around." Dale didn't move. "I know my rights." "Then you know resisting makes this worse," Harris said. For a moment, Dale looked like he might run. Reaper shifted his weight slightly, not aggressive, but ready. Dale saw it and deflated. He turned around. Harris cuffed him, reciting Miranda rights in a flat, professional tone that said he'd done this 1,000 times and hated every single one that involved a child victim. As Harris walked Dale toward the door, Dale tried one more time. "Ethan, please, tell them the truth. Tell them I love you. Tell them I've only ever tried to help you." Ethan looked at him. This man who'd locked him in a freezing garage and discussed his death like a business transaction, and said something that landed harder than any scream could have. "I don't know what love is supposed to feel like," Ethan said quietly. "But I'm pretty sure it's not this." Dale's face crumpled. Not with remorse. With the realization that he'd lost control of the narrative forever. Harris put Dale in the patrol car and came back inside. "We're going to need statements from everyone, and I need that phone secured as evidence." Viper handed it over in a plastic bag she'd gotten from Dolores. "Chain of custody maintained. I documented everything." "You always this prepared?" Ochoa asked. "Only when kids are dying," Viper said. A third vehicle pulled into the lot, a white sedan with state plates. A woman in her 50s got out, carrying a tablet and the kind of tired determination that came from seeing too many cases like this. She walked in and introduced herself to Harris first, then to the room. "I'm Margaret Yates, Child Protective Services. Who made the initial report?" "I did," Viper said. Margaret looked at Ethan, and her professional mask softened just slightly. "Hello, sweetheart. My name is Margaret. I'm here to make sure you're safe. Is that okay?" Ethan nodded, still holding Reaper's arm. Margaret sat across from him in the booth, moving slowly, carefully. "I need to ask you some questions. Some of them might be hard. You can stop any time you need to. You can ask for water, for a break, for anything. This is about you, not about making adults feel better. Understand?" "Yes, ma'am," Ethan whispered. "First question," Margaret said. "Where do you sleep at night?" "The garage," Ethan said. Dale converted it into a room, but there's no heat, and he locks the door from the outside. Margaret wrote that down without reacting. "How often does he lock it?" "Every night." "Why does he say he locks it?" "He says I sleepwalk, but I don't." "Do you have access to food whenever you're hungry?" Ethan shook his head. "He locks the pantry. I get breakfast before school, before I stopped going to school. And dinner, sometimes, if I behave." Margaret's pen stopped. "You stopped going to school?" 3 months ago, Ethan said. He told the district I was being homeschooled, but he doesn't teach me anything. He just leaves me alone all day." "What do you do all day?" Ethan's voice got smaller. "Wait for him to come home. Try to stay quiet. Sometimes I read old books I find in boxes. Mostly I just try not to make him angry." Margaret looked at Harris. "We need a welfare check on the residence, tonight." "Already requested," Harris said. "Warrants being expedited." That's when Reaper spoke up, voice measured. "Ma'am, the boy mentioned his mother died 6 months ago. Car accident. He has questions about whether it was actually an accident." Margaret's eyes sharpened. "What kind of questions?" Ethan's hands twisted together. I found crushed pills in her coffee mug the morning she died. She said she felt dizzy. She drove anyway and went off the road. Police said she fell asleep at the wheel. The room went absolutely still. Did you tell anyone about the pills? Margaret asked carefully. I didn't understand what they were then, Ethan said. I was 9. I just thought Mom was sick. But now, his voice broke. Now I know what those pills do. Dale has them all over the house. Margaret looked at Harris. The mother's death needs to be reopened. I'll make the call, Harris said, already pulling out his phone. Ochoa spoke up from the corner. The prescription bottle's on the table. I ran the names. Linda Travers is a school district administrator. Works in the exemptions office. Handles homeschool paperwork. Everything clicked into place. She falsified his homeschool exemption, Viper said. That's how he kept Ethan out of school without red flags. And she's one of the names on the pill bottles, Doc added. Margaret's expression went from concerned to furious. This is conspiracy. Multiple adults working together to isolate and endanger a child. For money, Reaper said quietly. Insurance money. Margaret turned to Ethan. Honey, do you know if your stepfather has life insurance on you? Ethan nodded miserably. I found papers in his office. 2 policies. One says term life. One says accidental death. That one's for more money. How much more? Margaret asked. $750,000. The number hung in the air like a guillotine blade. And he took those policies out when? Margaret pressed. After Mom died. I saw the dates. 2 months after. Margaret closed her eyes briefly, the kind of reaction professionals have when they realize a case is worse than they thought. We're getting you out of that house tonight. You're not going back. Where will I go? Ethan asked, and the fear in his voice was different now. Not fear of Dale, but fear of the unknown. Emergency foster placement, Margaret said gently. With someone who's been vetted and trained. Someone safe. Ethan looked at Reaper. Can I stay with him? Reaper's face showed the first crack in his composure. Kid, You said I was safe with you, Ethan said desperately. You said I wasn't alone anymore. You're not, Reaper said firmly. But there's a process. Background checks, training, home studies. I can't just take you home tonight, even if I wanted to. Do you want to? Ethan asked. The question was so direct, so raw, that Reaper took a long moment before answering. Yeah, he said finally. I do. But wanting and being ready are different things. You need someone who's ready right now. Ethan's face fell. Margaret reached across and touched his hand. Sweetheart, this man is being honest with you, which is a gift, and he's not saying no. He's saying not yet. There's a difference. What if the foster people are like Dale? Ethan whispered. They won't be, Margaret said with certainty. I choose them myself, and I don't choose wrong. Doc cleared his throat. Ma'am, I'm a registered nurse. I can provide medical oversight for his care, and I'll make sure his neck gets proper treatment. I can do check-ins, Viper said. Make sure he's adjusting, advocate if there are issues. And I'll be there, Reaper said, looking at Ethan. Not every day, maybe, but regular. I'm going to do the training, pass the checks, and see if I can be someone official in your life. But that takes time. How much time? Ethan asked. Couple months, Reaper said honestly. Maybe more. Ethan processed that, then asked the question that killed everyone in the room. What if Dale gets out of jail before then? Harris knelt down again. Son, that recording you had? That's evidence of criminal conspiracy to commit murder. Combined with the child abuse charges, the fraud, the falsified records, he's not getting out. Not for a long time. But what if he does? Ethan pressed. What if he finds me? Margaret's voice was steel, wrapped in kindness. Then he goes right back to jail for violating a protection order, because I'm filing one tonight. What's that? Ethan asked. Legal paperwork that says he can't come near you, can't contact you, can't even say your name to other people. If he breaks it, he gets arrested immediately. Ethan's shoulders relaxed slightly, not all the way, but enough. A fourth vehicle pulled up outside. Harris glanced out the window. That's my supervisor. A woman in a sheriff's supervisor uniform walked in, took one look at the scene and said, Somebody tell me we're doing this by the book, because this looks like it's about to be a media circus. Harris handed her the burner phone, now in an evidence bag. Listen to the voice memo labeled November 14th. Everything after that is just cleanup. The supervisor listened. Her face went through the same journey everyone else has had. Shock, disgust, rage, and finally, cold professionalism. We are executing a warrant on the residence? She asked. En route, Harris confirmed. And the mother's death? Being reopened. Child's placement? Emergency foster through CPS, Margaret said. The supervisor nodded. Then we do this clean. Full documentation, medical evaluation at the hospital, photos of injuries, complete statement from the minor. I want this case so airtight that his lawyer cries when he reads the file. Already on it, Harris said. The supervisor looked at Ethan. Son, you were very brave today. What you did, keeping evidence, finding help, that saved your life. Do you understand that? Ethan's voice was barely audible. I was just scared. Being brave and being scared aren't opposites, the supervisor said. They're the same thing. An ambulance pulled up then, lights flashing but no siren. Doc stood. I'll ride with him to the hospital. Make sure they do a full workup. I'm going too, Reaper said. Margaret hesitated. You're not family. No, ma'am, Reaper said. But I'm the person he asked to sit with him, and I told him I wouldn't leave. So I'm not leaving. Margaret looked at Ethan. You want him there? Ethan nodded frantically. Then he goes, Margaret said. As they prepared to move Ethan to the ambulance, Dolores appeared with a bag. Made him some sandwiches for later, and there's a blanket in there. Gets cold in hospitals. Ethan took the bag like it was treasure. Thank you. You take care, honey, Dolores said, and her eyes were wet. The paramedics were gentle, professional. They loaded Ethan onto a gurney, even though he could walk, because protocol mattered, and because sometimes being taken care of meant letting people carry you when you'd been carrying yourself for too long. Reaper climbed into the ambulance beside him. As the doors closed, Ethan reached out and grabbed Reaper's hand. What if they don't believe me at the hospital? Ethan asked. What if the doctors are like the one who believed Dale before? Reaper squeezed his hand gently. Then I'll make them listen. And if they still don't, I'll find doctors who will. You're not alone in this anymore, kid. Not now. Not ever. The ambulance pulled away, lights painting the desert sky red and blue. Back in the diner, Viper sat across from Margaret. What happens to Dale now? Booked, arraigned, held pending trial, Margaret said. With that recording and the child's testimony, he's not making bail. And Linda Travers? Warrant will be issued by morning, Harris said. Conspiracy charges, fraud, accessory. She'll roll on him to save herself. They always do.
Viper nodded slowly. And the mother's death investigation? Detective Division will exhume, if necessary, the supervisor said. Run full tox screens. Interview witnesses. If he killed her, we'll prove it. He did, Viper said with certainty. That boy knows. Kids always know. An hour later, at Yavapai Regional Medical Center, a nurse practitioner named Sarah Chen examined Ethan's neck with careful hands and furious eyes. She'd seen neglect before, but this was something colder. This brace should have been replaced 3 weeks ago, she said. The pressure points are causing tissue damage. Can you fix it? Ethan asked. We'll get you into a proper brace tonight, Sarah said. And I'm referring you to an orthopedic specialist.
Your neck healed wrong. You might need surgery to correct it. Ethan's face went pale. Surgery? Not today, Sarah said gently, but eventually. The good news is you're young. Your body can heal from this. It'll just take time and proper care. Will it hurt? Ethan asked. Sarah didn't lie to him. Some, but we have medicine for pain. Real medicine, prescribed to you, in doses that help instead of hurt. While Sarah worked, Reaper sat in the corner of the exam room, quiet but present. When Ethan flinched during the brace removal, Reaper spoke up. You're doing good, kid. Keep breathing. It hurts, Ethan whispered. I know. Hurt means healing sometimes. The old brace came off. Ethan's skin underneath was raw and angry, marked with pressure sores that made Sarah swear under her breath. This is criminal, she said, taking photos for evidence. No child should endure this. She cleaned and treated the wounds, applied medication, fitted a new brace that actually fit properly. Ethan cried through parts of it, not from pain, but from the overwhelming relief of finally being cared for. When it was done, Sarah sat on the exam table beside him. Ethan, I need to tell you something important. What happened to you wasn't your fault. None of it. You didn't deserve to be hurt. You didn't deserve to be scared. You deserved to be loved and safe. And the fact that you weren't says everything about the adults who failed you and nothing about you. Do you understand? Ethan nodded, but his voice shook. Then, why did it happen? Sarah's eyes filled with tears she wouldn't let fall. Because sometimes bad people hide behind good faces. But you know what? You found good people hiding behind scary faces. And that's going to make all the difference. Reaper stood and walked over. Kid asked me earlier why I said yes when he wanted to sit down. Ethan looked up at him. I said yes, Reaper continued, because I spent 20 years in the army learning how to fight. And the whole point of learning to fight is so you can protect people who can't protect themselves. You walked into that diner looking for someone strong enough to stand between you and a monster. I'm just glad I was the one sitting there. Ethan's face crumpled again, but this time when he cried, Reaper pulled him into a careful hug that minded his neck and his bruises and his broken places, and let him sob into leather that smelled like motor oil and safety. In the hallway outside, Margaret stood with her tablet, typing notes that would become a court case that would change a child's life forever. And 300 miles away in a jail cell, Dale Merrick sat with his head in his hands, his perfect smile finally gone, while a recording of his own voice played on loop in his mind, because the truth, once spoken, can't be unheard. And a boy who'd been silenced for 8 months had finally found his voice. 3 days after the diner, Ethan sat in a living room that smelled like cinnamon and old books, wearing pajamas that actually fit, and tried to remember what normal felt like. The woman across from him was named Patricia Owens, 62 years old, retired elementary school teacher, licensed foster parent for 8 years. She had gray hair cut short, reading glasses on a chain, and the kind of steady calm that came from spending decades around children who needed adults to be predictable. "You don't have to eat it if you don't like it," Patricia said, watching Ethan stare at the scrambled eggs on his plate like they might vanish. "But you also don't have to finish it just because it's there. You eat until you're full, then you stop. That's the rule." Ethan took a small bite, then another. His hands still moved too fast, like his body didn't trust that more food would come later. "Ethan," Patricia said gently, "the food isn't going anywhere, I promise." He set his fork down, breathing hard. "Sorry." "Nothing to be sorry for," Patricia said. "But I need you to hear something important. In this house, we don't lock pantries. We don't lock bedroom doors from the outside. You can eat when you're hungry. You can get water in the middle of the night. You can come out of your room whenever you want. Those aren't privileges. They're rights." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "What if I mess up?" "Then we talk about it," Patricia said. "That's what happens when you mess up here. Conversation, not punishment, not locked doors. Just talking." "I don't know how to do that," Ethan whispered. "Then I'll teach you," Patricia said. "One conversation at a time." That afternoon, Margaret Yates arrived with a folder full of paperwork and news that made Ethan's stomach drop. "The warrant was executed on Dale's residence," Margaret said, sitting at Patricia's kitchen table. "Investigators found documentation of the insurance policies, the ledger with pill distribution records, and email correspondence with Linda Travers discussing your homeschool exemption." "Did they find anything about my mom?" Ethan asked. Margaret's expression softened. "They found her original autopsy file in Dale's office, with notes in the margins. He'd been researching which medications cause drowsiness and how much would be needed to impair driving without showing up as obvious overdose." Ethan's breath caught. "So he did kill her." "The detective division is building that case now," Margaret said carefully. "They're exhuming her remains for additional toxicology testing. It takes time, but they're treating it as homicide." "How much time?" Ethan asked. "Months," Margaret admitted. "Maybe longer. But Ethan, even if we can't prove what happened to your mother right now, we have enough to keep you safe from him. That's what matters most." "What about Linda Travers?" Patricia asked. "Arrested yesterday morning," Margaret said with satisfaction. "She's already talking. Gave a full statement implicating Dale in the prescription fraud scheme. Said he approached her 2 years ago with a business proposition. She falsifies exemption paperwork for homeschooled kids in exchange for a cut of his pill distribution profits." Ethan's voice was small. "Were there other kids?" Margaret hesitated, then decided on honesty. "2 others, both removed from their homes yesterday, both safe now." The weight of that settled over the kitchen. Dale hadn't just hurt Ethan. He'd built a system. "There's something else," Margaret said. "Dale's arraignment is in 4 days. You don't have to attend, but the prosecutor wants to know if you'd be willing to provide testimony if this goes to trial." "What kind of testimony?" Ethan asked. "About what he did to you, how he treated you, what you heard him say." "The recording will be evidence, but your voice matters too." Ethan's hands twisted together in his lap. "Will he be there?" "Yes," Margaret said, "but you wouldn't have to look at him, and you'd have support people with you. Me, a victim advocate, maybe Patricia if you want." "What about Reaper?" Ethan asked. "I'll make sure he's there," Margaret promised. Patricia put her hand over Ethan's. "You don't have to decide right now. This is your choice. No pressure." "But if I don't testify, what happens?" Ethan asked. "The recording is strong evidence," Margaret said. "Combined with the financial records, the pill bottles, the medical documentation of your injuries, there's a solid case without your testimony. But your voice makes it stronger." "I want to," Ethan said suddenly. "I want to tell them what he did." Patricia squeezed his hand. "You're very brave." "I'm not brave," Ethan said. "I'm just tired of being quiet." That evening, Reaper showed up at Patricia's house with a motorcycle helmet and a question. "You ever ridden on a bike?" he asked Ethan. Ethan shook his head, eyes wide. "Want to?" Reaper asked. Patricia came to the door, arms crossed but smiling slightly. "You have proper safety gear for a child?" Reaper held up a smaller helmet, jacket, and gloves. "Borrowed from a club member's kid. All approved. Just a short ride around the block. 10 minutes max. I'll keep it under 30 miles an hour." Patricia looked at Ethan. "You want to?" Ethan nodded so fast his new neck brace shifted. "Slow down there," Reaper said, adjusting the brace gently. "We're not in a hurry." Getting Ethan onto the bike took patience. His hip still hurt, and the new brace limited his neck movement. Reaper mounted first, then helped Ethan climb on behind him, positioning his arms around Reaper's waist. "You hold on, but you don't squeeze tight enough to restrict my breathing," Reaper instructed. "If you get scared, you tap my shoulder twice. We stop immediately. Understand?" "Yes, sir," Ethan said. "And stop calling me sir," Reaper said. "Makes me feel old." The bike rumbled to life. Ethan tensed. Reaper waited until he felt the boy's grip relax slightly, then pulled away from the curb with the kind of careful smoothness that takes years to master. They rode through Patricia's quiet neighborhood, past houses with lights in the windows and families eating dinner together. The wind pulled at Ethan's jacket. The engine thrummed beneath them. For 3 minutes, Ethan forgot about Dale and courtrooms and insurance policies. He just felt the road moving under him, and the solid presence of someone who'd promised not to leave. When they pulled back up to Patricia's house, Ethan was smiling. Actually smiling. "We'll do that again," Reaper said. "When you're healed more. Take longer rides, see some country." "Really?" Ethan asked. "I don't say things I don't mean," Reaper said. Inside, Patricia made hot chocolate while Ethan told her about the ride with the kind of excited energy she hadn't seen from him yet. Reaper sat at the kitchen table, quiet but present, and Patricia caught his eye. "Thank you," she mouthed silently. Reaper just nodded. 4 days later, Ethan walked into the Yavapai County Courthouse wearing clothes Patricia had bought him. Jeans that fit, a button-up shirt that wasn't too big, shoes that didn't need duct tape. Margaret walked on one side of him, Reaper on the other. The courtroom was smaller than Ethan expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, a judge's bench that looked like it had seen 1,000 broken promises. Dale sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed. He'd lost weight. His face looked hollow, older. When Ethan walked in, Dale's head turned, and their eyes met for half a second before Ethan looked away. The judge was a woman in her 50s named Carolyn Hendricks. She'd been on the bench for 20 years and had a reputation for not tolerating nonsense. "Mr. Merrick," Judge Hendricks said, "you're charged with conspiracy to commit murder, child endangerment, prescription fraud, insurance fraud, and felony abuse of a vulnerable person. How do you plead?" Dale's lawyer, a public defender who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, stood. "Not guilty, Your Honor." The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Rachel Kim, stood immediately. "Your Honor, the state requests remand without bail. Mr. Merrick represents a clear danger to the community, and specifically to the minor victim in this case." "Defense response?" Judge Hendricks asked. Dale's lawyer shuffled papers. Your Honor, my client has no prior criminal record. He's a respected member of the community with steady employment.
He's on tape discussing the murder of a child,
Rachel interrupted.
for money.
Judge Hendricks held up one hand. I've reviewed the evidence filing. The recording alone is damning. But, Ms. Kim, walk me through the rest. Rachel stood, professional and precise. Your Honor, investigators recovered financial documents showing Mr. Merrick took out 2 life insurance policies on the victim, totaling $900,000. They found a ledger documenting prescription fraud involving multiple individuals. They found falsified homeschool records created in conspiracy with a school administrator who's already been arrested and is cooperating. Medical experts documented untreated injuries consistent with abuse and neglect. And the victim himself has provided detailed testimony corroborated by multiple witnesses. The recording could be misinterpreted, Dale's lawyer tried weakly. The recording is him discussing how to make a child's death look natural, Rachel said flatly. There's no other interpretation. Judge Hendricks looked at Dale for a long moment. Mr. Merrick, do you have anything you'd like to say before I rule on bail? Dale stood slowly. His voice came out strained. Your Honor, I loved that boy. Everything I did was for his well-being. These charges are based on misunderstandings and manipulations by people who don't know the full story. Ethan's hands clenched in his lap. Margaret whispered, You don't have to listen to this. I want to, Ethan whispered back. Judge Hendricks's expression didn't change. Mr. Merrick, I've listened to the recording. I've read the medical reports. I've reviewed the financial documents. The only manipulation I see is the kind that requires planning, patience, and profound cruelty. Bail is denied. You'll remain in custody pending trial. The gavel came down. Dale's face crumpled. No, please, I can't. Court is adjourned, Judge Hendricks said. Bailiff, remove the defendant. As they led Dale away, he looked back at Ethan one more time. I'm sorry, he called out.
Ethan, I'm so sorry.
Ethan stood up, and Reaper moved to steady him, but the boy didn't need it. He stood on his own and said clearly, You're not sorry you hurt me. You're sorry you got caught. Dale's face went pale. The bailiff pulled him through the door. In the hallway outside, Ethan's knees finally gave out. Reaper caught him, lowered him to a bench, knelt in front of him. You did good in there, Reaper said. Real good. I thought I'd feel better, Ethan whispered, seeing him locked up. But I just feel tired. That's normal, Margaret said, sitting beside him. Justice doesn't erase what happened. It just stops it from happening again. What happens now? Ethan asked. Now we build your life, Margaret said. School, therapy, medical treatment, stability. The boring, important stuff. And the trial? Ethan asked. Months away, Rachel Kim said, approaching them. She introduced herself to Ethan. I'm the prosecutor. I wanted to meet you. Ethan looked up at her. Are you going to make me testify? Only if you want to, Rachel said. But honestly, with the evidence we have, I can convict him without putting you through that. The recording, the documents, the cooperating witness, it's overwhelming. I'd only ask you to testify if he takes this to trial and forces us to prove every element. Even then, I'd fight to use video testimony so you wouldn't have to see him. What if he gets out someday? Ethan asked. With the charges he's facing, if convicted, he's looking at 20 to 30 years minimum, Rachel said. He'll be an adult by the time he's eligible for parole. And that protection order Margaret filed? It's permanent. He can never contact you again. Ever. Ethan processed that. So, I'm really safe? You're really safe, Rachel confirmed. 3 weeks later, Ethan sat in Doc's clinic while the nurse practitioner examined his neck and delivered news that was both good and complicated. "The vertebrae healed incorrectly," she said, showing him x-rays he didn't fully understand. "You'll need surgery to realign them. Otherwise, you'll have chronic pain and limited mobility as you grow." "When?" Ethan asked. 2 months, she said. "We want you stronger first. Better nutrition, physical therapy to build supporting muscles. Then we'll schedule it." "Will it fix everything?" Ethan asked. She didn't lie to him. "It'll fix most things. You'll have full range of motion back. Pain will decrease significantly. But you'll always have some reminder. Maybe stiffness in cold weather, maybe occasional headaches. Trauma leaves marks, Ethan, physical and otherwise." "I know," Ethan said quietly. That afternoon, Reaper picked him up from the clinic and drove him not to Patricia's house, but to a different address. A clubhouse with motorcycles parked outside and men who looked dangerous but greeted Ethan by name. "We want to show you something," Reaper said. Inside, the clubhouse smelled like coffee and motor oil. A long table was covered with paperwork. Viper stood beside it. "These are CASA volunteer applications," she explained. "Court-appointed special advocate. It's a program where trained volunteers work with kids in the system. Make sure they're getting what they need. Advocate in court. Be a consistent presence." "Okay," Ethan said, confused. "Reaper's applying," Viper said. "So am I. So is Doc. We're going to do the training, pass the background checks, and become official advocates. For you. And for other kids who need people who won't walk away." Ethan's eyes went wide. "All of you?" "Chapter voted on it last week," Reaper said. "We're starting a partnership with the county. Hellsangels chapter becomes a resource for CPS. We do home checks, provide transportation, offer support. Legal, official, by the book." "Why?" Ethan asked. Reaper knelt down to his level. "Because you showed us something we forgot. Protecting people isn't just about fighting, it's about showing up. And we want to show up." 2 months later, on a Tuesday morning in February, Ethan was wheeled into an operating room at Yavapai Regional Medical Center for cervical vertebrae realignment surgery. Patricia held his hand until the anesthesia took him under. Reaper sat in the waiting room with Doc and Viper, not talking much, just present. The surgery took 4 hours. When Ethan woke up, his neck was in a specialized surgical brace, his throat hurt from the breathing tube, and Patricia was sitting beside his bed. "You're okay," she said immediately. "Surgery went perfectly. Doctor said you're going to heal completely." "Reaper?" Ethan mumbled through the fog of anesthesia. "Right outside," Patricia said. "Waiting room won't let more than 2 visitors at a time, but he's been here the whole time." Ethan drifted back to sleep. When he woke again, it was dark outside, and Reaper sat where Patricia had been. "Hey, kid," Reaper said softly. "You scared us for a minute there. Your heart rate dropped during surgery. But you're tough. Came back fighting." "Fighting what?" Ethan mumbled. "The medicine, apparently," Reaper said. "Doc said you've got a strong constitution. Your body doesn't like being told what to do." Ethan smiled weakly. "Sounds familiar." "Yeah," Reaper said. "Sounds like someone I know." Ethan's eyes started to close again, but he forced them open. "Reaper?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for saying yes." Reaper's throat tightened. "Thank you for asking." In a county jail cell 300 miles of emotional distance away, Dale Merrick sat across from his lawyer and listened to the plea deal being offered. 25 years, the lawyer said. Possibility of parole after 18. You'd be 73 when eligible. "And if I fight it?" Dale asked. "You lose," the lawyer said bluntly. "The recording alone convicts you. Add in the cooperating witness, the documents, the medical evidence, the child's testimony if it comes to that. You lose. And if you lose at trial, you're looking at 40 to life.
They're making an example of me,
Dale said bitterly. No, the lawyer said. They're holding you accountable. There's a difference. Dale stared at his cuffed hands.
I want to see Ethan. One more time. To explain.
Not happening, the lawyer said. Protection order is ironclad. You don't get to traumatize him again.
I wasn't trying to traumatize him,
Dale said.
I was trying to secure our future.
The lawyer stared at him with something between pity and disgust. You were trying to kill a child for money. The fact that you can't see that is exactly why you need to take this deal. Dale was silent for a long time. Then, finally,
what do I have to do?
Plead guilty to all charges, allocute in court, give a full confession, and stay away from that boy for the rest of your life. Dale closed his eyes. Fine. 2 weeks later, Ethan sat in Patricia's living room with Reaper and got the news.
He took a plea deal, Margaret said over speakerphone. 25 years, no trial, no testimony needed. It's over.
Ethan's hands shook.
So I don't have to see him again?
Never, Margaret said firmly.
And Ethan, there's more news. The investigation into your mother's death, the toxicology came back. They found metabolites consistent with sedative medication in her bone tissue. The DA is filing additional homicide charges.
Ethan's breath caught.
So he did kill her.
Yes, Margaret said gently.
He did. And now he'll answer for that, too.
When the call ended, Ethan sat very still. Reaper didn't push him to talk, just sat beside him. Finally, Ethan spoke.
I thought I'd feel happy, knowing he was locked up for what he did to Mom. But I just feel sad.
Why sad? Reaper asked.
Because she's still gone, Ethan whispered. And nothing brings her back.
Reaper nodded slowly.
No, nothing does.
But you're here, and she'd want you to be okay. So we make you okay. That's how we honor her. Ethan leaned against Reaper's shoulder, careful of his healing neck, and cried for his mother for the first time since she died. And Reaper let him. Because sometimes the strongest thing a man can do is sit still while a child grieves. 6 months after the diner, Ethan stood in front of Lincoln Elementary School and felt his stomach twist into knots. The surgical brace was gone. His neck moved freely now, just a faint scar at the base of his skull, the only physical reminder. His hip didn't hurt anymore. He'd gained 12 pounds of healthy weight. Patricia had taken him shopping for a backpack that didn't rattle with stolen pill bottles, and he wore jeans without duct tape and shoes that actually fit. But none of that stopped his hands from shaking. "You don't have to do this today," Patricia said gently, standing beside the car.
We can wait another week.
"No," Ethan said, though his voice was thin. "I want to go back. What if they know?"
Know what?
Patricia asked. "What happened to me? What Dale did? What if they look at me and only see the broken kid?" Patricia knelt down, eye level with him.
Then they're not looking hard enough. Because I see a kid who survived something that would have destroyed most adults. I see someone brave enough to ask for help when he needed it. That's not broken, Ethan. That's strong."
Ethan nodded, not quite believing it, but wanting to. Reaper's motorcycle pulled up behind Patricia's car. He'd been cleared as an official CASA volunteer 3 weeks ago, passed every background check, completed 60 hours of training, and earned the right to be part of Ethan's official support system. He walked over, carrying something in a paper bag. "Got you something," Reaper said, handing it to Ethan. Inside was a small leather keychain with a brass compass attached. On the back, engraved, were 4 words. You asked. I answered. Ethan's throat tightened. What's it for? For remembering, Reaper said. When things get hard, and they will get hard sometimes, you remember that you had the courage to ask for help once. And that courage doesn't go away. It's part of you now. What if I can't do this? Ethan whispered. Then you try again tomorrow, Reaper said simply. And if tomorrow's too hard, you try the day after. But I think you're going to walk through those doors and surprise yourself. Ethan attached the keychain to his backpack, took a breath that hurt his chest, and walked toward the school entrance. Patricia and Reaper watched him go, not following, giving him space to do this himself. At the door, Ethan paused, looked back. Reaper gave him a small nod. Patricia waved. Ethan went inside. The first 3 hours were overwhelming. Too many people, too much noise, too many questions about where he'd been. His teacher, Mrs. Alvarez, had been briefed by the school counselor and gave him space without making it obvious. She paired him with a quiet kid named Marcus for partner reading, and Marcus didn't ask questions, just shared his book and laughed at the funny parts. At lunch, Ethan sat alone at first, the way he'd learned to do in the months before everything fell apart. But then Marcus sat down across from him. You can sit with us if you want, Marcus said, nodding toward a table with 3 other kids. We're not cool or anything, but we're nice. Ethan looked at the table, at the kids laughing over cafeteria pizza, and something in his chest loosened slightly. Okay, he said. By the end of the day, Ethan was exhausted, but intact. He walked out of school and found Patricia waiting, and when she asked how it went, he said something that made her smile. I think I'm going to be okay. 2 weeks later, Margaret called with news that made Ethan's hands shake for a different reason. The Arizona State Legislature is introducing a bill, she said. It's called the Child Protective Accountability Act. It requires mandatory medical check-ins for all homeschooled children, quarterly home visits by certified caseworkers, and stricter oversight of guardian-controlled trust funds. Why? Ethan asked. Because of you, Margaret said gently. Your case exposed systematic failures. Linda Travers's cooperation revealed a network of falsified exemptions spanning 3 counties. Your story, what you survived, it made lawmakers realize the loopholes were too big. They're calling it Ethan's Law. Ethan went very quiet. They're naming it after me? They want to, Margaret said. But only if you're comfortable with that. You can say no, it'll still pass. But the sponsor thought your name would remind people why it matters. I don't want to be famous, Ethan said. You won't be, Margaret promised. Your identity stays protected. It'll just be a name that means something. A name that says, children matter. Ethan thought about the other 2 kids who'd been pulled from homes because Dale's scheme was exposed, thought about how many others might be out there, trapped behind locked doors and falsified paperwork, waiting for someone to notice. Okay, he said. They can use my name. 3 weeks after that, Reaper took Ethan to the Desert Rose truck stop for the first time since that November night. Dolores still worked there. When she saw Ethan walk through the door, healthy, smiling, wearing a jacket that fit, she set down her coffee pot and came around the counter. She pulled him into a careful hug that minded his still healing places and said, Look at you. Just look at you. Hi, Miss Dolores, Ethan said. You eating? She asked. Always, Ethan said, and she laughed. They sat in the same booth, The same corner table where Ethan had asked his question, and Reaper had nudged out a chair with his boot. Dolores brought them grilled cheese and fries without being asked, and Ethan ate slowly this time, not frantically, because his body had learned food would keep coming. "Why'd you bring me here?" Ethan asked Reaper. "Because this is where your life changed," Reaper said. "Thought you should see it when you're strong, not just when you were scared." Ethan looked around the diner. Different people filled the booths now, different conversations, but the same fluorescent lights, the same worn vinyl, the same possibility that any moment could become the moment that saves someone. "Reaper?" Ethan said. "Yeah?" "Why'd you really say yes when I asked to sit down?" Reaper set down his coffee mug, thinking. "I spent 20 years in the army, learning that strength isn't about how hard you can hit. It's about who you stand in front of when bad things come. You walked up to my table, looking for someone strong enough to stand between you and something terrible. I said yes because that's what strength is for." "But you didn't know me," Ethan said. "Didn't need to," Reaper said. "You asked. That was enough." Ethan's eyes filled with tears, but he smiled through them. "I'm glad I picked your table." "Me too, kid," Reaper said. "Me too." That's when the diner door opened, and a girl walked in. Maybe 12 years old, wearing a jacket 2 sizes too big, walking with a slight limp, eyes scanning the room with the same desperate calculation Ethan recognized instantly. She approached 2 booths and got turned away quietly. Then she started toward the corner where Ethan and Reaper sat. Ethan's breath caught. He looked at Reaper, who'd noticed too. The girl stopped beside their table, hands twisting together, voice barely above a whisper. "Excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you, but can I please sit here for a few minutes? Just until someone stops looking for me?" Reaper looked at Ethan, not asking permission exactly, but acknowledging what this moment meant. Ethan understood. He slid over in the booth and nodded to the space beside him. "You can sit here. You're safe." The girl's face crumpled with relief. She sat down carefully, and Dolores appeared within seconds, reading the situation the way only someone who'd seen it before could. "What sounds good, sweetheart?" Dolores asked. The girl stared at the menu with overwhelmed eyes. "Grilled cheese," Ethan said gently. "Fries, chocolate shake. Trust me." The girl nodded. When Dolores walked away, Ethan looked at the girl and said the words someone once said to him. "It's not a trick. The food's real, and you're safe right here." Reaper pulled out his phone, typed a single word, and hit send. The message went to Viper, to Doc, to Margaret, to the network they'd built in the 6 months since Ethan's rescue. The girl's name was Sophie. Her stepmother had guardianship and a boyfriend who made her uncomfortable. She'd walked 3 miles in the cold to find somewhere public, somewhere with witnesses, somewhere she could breathe. Within 20 minutes, Viper arrived. Then a patrol car, this time called by Reaper, not by someone trying to control the narrative. A different deputy than before, but the same recognition when they saw a scared child and adults who gave a damn. Sophie looked at Ethan while the adults talked in low, serious voices. "How did you know?" she asked. "Know what?" Ethan said. "That I needed help. That I wasn't just being dramatic." Ethan touched the compass keychain on his backpack. "Because 6 months ago, I walked into this diner looking exactly like you. Scared, hurt, out of options. And someone said yes when I asked to sit down. That's how I know." "What happened?" Sophie asked. "After." "The truth came out," Ethan said simply. "The person hurting me went to jail. I got safe.
I got help. I got people who actually care. It was hard, really hard. But I'm okay now.
And you're going to be okay too. Sophie's eyes widened.
You promise?
Ethan looked at Reaper, at Viper, at Dolores watching from the counter, at the deputy taking notes with the kind of care that said this one wouldn't slip through the cracks.
Yeah,
Ethan said. I promise. 4 months later, Ethan stood in front of a room full of legislators, social workers, and child advocates at the Arizona State Capitol. The Child Protective Accountability Act was being signed into law, and Ethan had been invited to speak. His hands shook holding the microphone, but Patricia sat in the front row beside Reaper, and that helped. My name is Ethan Cole, he said, and his voice carried stronger than he expected. I'm 11 years old. When I was 10, the person who was supposed to protect me tried to kill me for insurance money. He locked me in a garage. He broke my neck. He starved me. He made me believe nobody would care if I disappeared. The room was silent, but one night I walked into a diner and asked a stranger if I could sit down, and he said yes. That's all it took. One person saying yes instead of no. One person who saw a kid in trouble and decided to care. Ethan looked at Reaper. I didn't need 100 heroes. I just needed one person to be brave enough to stand between me and something terrible. This law is named after me, but it's really named after every kid who's waiting for someone to notice, every kid who's being hurt behind closed doors, every kid who needs just one person to say yes when they ask for help. He took a breath. So if you're listening to this, and you see a kid who looks scared, who looks hurt, who looks like they need help, be that person. You don't have to be tough. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to care enough to not look away. Because the scariest stranger in the room might actually be the safest person there. And sometimes asking, "Can I sit with you?" is the bravest question in the world. The room erupted in applause, but Ethan barely heard it. He was looking at Reaper, who had tears in his eyes and pride written across his face. After the ceremony, reporters tried to get interviews, but Margaret ran interference. Ethan slipped out a side door with Patricia and Reaper, escaped to the parking lot where the world felt normal again. You did good in there, Reaper said. I was so scared, Ethan admitted. Being brave and being scared are the same thing, Reaper said. Remember? Ethan smiled. Yeah, I remember. 6 months after that, on a warm day in September, Ethan and Reaper rode Reaper's motorcycle up through the mountains outside Prescott. Ethan's neck was fully healed. His hip didn't hurt. He'd started 8th grade and made the soccer team despite never having played before. Patricia's house had become home, but she was in the process of finalizing something that would make it official forever. Where are we going? Ethan asked over the engine noise. Somewhere you need to see, Reaper said. They pulled off the highway at a scenic overlook. Mountains stretched in every direction, pine trees and red rocks and sky so blue it hurt to look at. Reaper killed the engine. They sat on the bike in silence for a minute. This is where I came after I got back from Afghanistan, Reaper said. When I didn't know how to be a civilian anymore. When everything felt too loud and too quiet at the same time. I'd ride up here and sit and try to figure out what I was supposed to do with the rest of my life. What'd you figure out? Ethan asked. That I wasn't done protecting people, Reaper said. I just had to find different ways to do it. The army taught me to fight, but you taught me that sometimes the most important battle is just showing up, just being present, just saying yes when someone asks for help. Ethan looked out at the mountains. I changed your life? You saved my life, Reaper said quietly. I just didn't know I needed saving until you asked to sit down. They sat there for a long time, two people who'd found each other in the worst moment and built something better from it. Finally, Ethan said, Dale's up for parole review in 18 years. I know, Reaper said. I'll be 29, Ethan said. You'll be 70. Yep. Will you still be here? Ethan asked, and the vulnerability in his voice made it clear he wasn't just asking about the parole hearing. Reaper looked at him with absolute certainty. Kid, I'm going to be here for every birthday, every graduation, every moment you need me. I'm going to teach you to ride your own bike. I'm going to embarrass you at your wedding. I'm going to be the old guy in the back giving unsolicited advice until you're sick of hearing my voice. Patricia's adopting you legally, but I'm claiming you too. Different paperwork, same promise. You're stuck with me. Ethan's face split into the widest smile Reaper had ever seen. Good, because you're stuck with me too. They rode back down the mountain as the sun set. Two lives that had collided in a truck stop diner and been forever changed by a simple question and a simple answer. When they pulled up to Patricia's house, she was waiting on the porch with papers in her hand and tears in her eyes. It's official, she said. The adoption went through. You're mine, Ethan. Legally, permanently, forever mine. Ethan ran to her, and she caught him in a hug that felt like coming home. Reaper stood back, watching, and felt something in his chest that had been broken for a long time finally click into place. That night, Ethan lay in his room. Not a garage, not a locked space, but a real room with heat and windows that opened and a door that stayed unlocked, and thought about the question he'd asked 6 months ago in a diner when he had nothing left to lose. Can I sit with you? 3 words. 1 question. The bravest thing he'd ever said. And the answer had changed everything. Because Ethan didn't need 100 people to save him. He just needed 1 person to say yes. 1 person to stand up when everyone else sat down. 1 person who looked scary on the outside, but turned out to be the safest place in the world. The question wasn't really about sitting at all. It was about being seen, being heard, being worth someone's time and protection and care. And the answer wasn't just yes. It was, I believe you. You matter. You're not alone anymore. That's what heroes do. They say yes when everyone else says no. They stand up when it's easier to look away. They choose to care when caring is hard. You don't need a leather vest or a motorcycle or a military background to be that person. You just need to pay attention. To notice the kid who's limping, to see the fear behind the brave face, to hear the question underneath the question. Can I sit with you really means, will you protect me? Will you believe me? Am I worth saving? And the only answer that matters is the one Reaper gave on a cold November night when a 10-year-old boy asked for permission to sit down. Yes. Always yes. Because every child deserves someone who will say yes. Every scared kid needs 1 person who won't turn away. Every voice crying for help deserves to be heard. Ethan learned that night that the scariest-looking stranger can be the answer to a prayer. And Reaper learned that sometimes the most important mission isn't the one you trained for. It's the one that walks up to your table and asks a question you never expected to answer. The question changed Ethan's life, but the answer changed them both. And somewhere in Arizona, in diners and truck stops and quiet neighborhoods, other kids are gathering courage to ask their own questions. Other adults are learning to say yes instead of no. Other lives are being saved by ordinary people who choose to be extraordinary in the moment that matters most. Because that's all it takes. 1 question, 1 answer, One person willing to care when caring is the hardest thing in the world. Can I sit with you? Yes, you can always sit with me. You're safe here, and I'm not going anywhere. That's the answer that saves lives. That's the answer that changes everything. That's the answer every child deserves to hear. And that's why Ethan's story matters. Not because it's dramatic or unique, but because it's proof that ordinary people can do extraordinary things simply by choosing to care. By saying yes when it would be easier to say no. By standing up when everyone else sits down. By being the person who doesn't look away. You don't have to be big or tough or trained. You just have to be present. You just have to care. You just have to say yes. Because somewhere, right now, a child is gathering the courage to ask the bravest question they'll ever ask, and they need someone, anyone, to give the answer that saves their life. Will you be that person? Will you say yes? Ethan did. Reaper did. And together, they proved that the simplest answer to the hardest question can change the entire world.